Welcome to La Grande Bouffe.
The Big Feast.
With myself, Cole Smithey.
And Mike Lacy.
Where we look at culture and politics through the prism of a single movie.
A single movie where we see the world.
Mike and I like to trade off picking the film that we will look at every week. And since I had done a couple in a row, Mike had the pleasure of choosing a couple. And so this week's film is
The Heartbreak Kid, a film by Elaine May. Very excited about this.
Oh my goodness. I'm a big fan of Elaine May, and I have to say I'm really thankful that you picked this movie because I knew nothing. I didn't know this movie existed.
Really?
I knew nothing about this movie. I watched it completely cold.
That's basically how I watched it, besides people I trust telling me that it's a wonderful movie, and I loved it. It's directed by Elaine May of Nichols and May, and she also is known for, unfortunately, things like Ishtar, but also
ruined her career, sadly.
But some amazing screenwriting credits.
Mikey and Nikki with John Cassavetes and Peter Falk, an amazing film.
Primary Colors, directed
Good
by
one.
her former comedy partner, Mike Nichols.
Yep.
And
funny lady, very funny lady.
Very funny.
Very gifted.
And this was based on a play by Neil Simon.
Right.
And
but before we get into
it,
movie,
hey Cole.
Yes, Mike.
What am I drinking over here?
Oh, look at that! You are drinking Numero Uno from Flying Dog.
Agave Cerveza.
Agave Cerveza. This is a session beer. They call them session beers when the ABV's low because you can drink them on a hot day and not get too wasted. This one's a 4.9 alcoholic content, and I have to say the agave is certainly present in the nose.
Yeah, it's a little tequila-y.
Good beer if you're out fishing, I think. Not that I do a lot of fishing, but I have fished, and I liked it when I did it.
Yeah, when was the last time we went fishing? I'm trying to remember the last time I went fishing. It comes up in the movie, so it's relevant.
Right. I went fishing for fluke. Fluke. I caught a shark. I didn't catch a fluke. I caught a I caught a shark.
You caught a shark.
But that was pretty fun. I mean, I have to say, pulling a 7-pound shark out of the water is
What kind of shark did you
fun.
catch? Is that legal?
Well, it is if they bite your line, you know.
I saw Sharknado, so you're lucky I didn't. I saw that this weekend with my 16-year-old sister, so you're lucky I didn't pick
I haven't seen Sharknado.
I saw Sharknado 3, which has a cameo with Anthony Weiner.
Really?
Yeah, he plays like a National Weather Service authority.
There's an Anthony Weiner documentary out there that I really want to see.
I've heard great things.
I have too, and I haven't seen it. I'm a little chomping at the bit to see it.
Yeah. I'll tell you an Anthony Weiner story when this podcast is done recording.
Oh, I can't wait for that. All right, so we got to get back into The Heartbreak Kid, which is, at least to my eye, it's the best thing that Charles Grodin ever did. It's the only thing where I've seen Charles Grodin as a leading man, and I have to say, he knocks it out of the park.
He's hilarious. So last week, if you're a loyal fan of ours, you listened to our podcast on Woody Allen's Hannah and Her Sisters. And I think that this is a nebbish character who can't make up his mind that hits such a more real note, is in a much more real world, and you kind of see him for the shitbag that he truly is.
I agree. And I also found a lot of resonances with The Graduate.
So I had a question for this movie, and you kind of hit it. Is this a sequel to The Graduate?
I don't know if it's a sequel, but it's certainly a parallel.
It's interesting. So again, Mike Nichols' breakout movie, The Graduate, 67, 72. So 5 years later, Elaine May brings out this really great movie. And let's hit the plot a little bit.
All right, so here we go. This is giving IMDb its due. 3 days into his Miami honeymoon, New York Jewish Lenny, played by Charles Grodin.
So he is. That was another question I had. He is also Jewish. Okay.
Right? Yeah,
he's not a goy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I had to do that same, and also I discovered that Charles Grodin himself is Jewish as well.
Well, he's in movies.
Ashkenazi. Is that how you say it?
Ashkenazi. Yeah.
So. So Lenny meets he's on his honeymoon with his very Jewish wife, and they're in Miami, and he meets blonde Kelly, played by the incredibly gorgeous, just so sexy Sybil Shepherd.
Everything of it, you son of a bitch.
Oh boy. She's anyway, we know stories that we could tell about Sybil Shepherd. We could tell those in a minute, but anyway, so meeting Kelly confirms his opinion that he has made a serious mistake in his marriage and that he has to pursue Kelly at all costs.
At all costs. What a joy! Starting with this, I don't know if I'd call it a whirlwind romance. With Lila.
Lila,
played by Elaine May's real life daughter.
I did not know that.
True story.
Whoa.
Yep. And
Jeannie
Berlin, and
it's a pretty unflattering role, I have to say. Jeannie really took it on the chin for this one, for the cause of romantic comedy. And I just want to put it out there that when it comes to romantic comedies, we've all seen them. We all know they're derogatorily referred to as rom-coms. This is perhaps the funniest, most uncomfortable romantic comedy I've ever watched. You will squirm in your seat the whole movie through. I squirmed the whole time I was watching it.
Well, it's so black, especially because he doesn't wind up back with Lila. Wait a minute, we can't give too much. Whatever. If you've seen it,
right,
I'm just.
Okay.
But I feel like the darkness of the tone. I feel a little bad. So it's spoiler alert.
Well, but it's a lot about the realities of marriage, and so. Charles Grodin, he works in he has you never really see him do any work, but he's in sporting goods. That's his industry.
The most you see him working is in the first shot. He gets out of a car, he walks with a briefcase into a building, gets back into a car.
His little white MG convertible with the black stripe across the front of it. He's living the life. This guy is 22, and he's got the world on a string. And he's obviously, his upbringing has led him to marry a nice Jewish girl, Lila. And they have their wedding. The movie kind of opens with the, wedding is one of the first things that happens, and they're going to go off on their honeymoon, and they're singing along to songs, and she has a terrible voice, but he doesn't really mind
there's so much Burt Bacharach in this movie.
Oh, lordy.
But also, I noticed something that's like kind of right after the wedding waltz, where at this wedding where Roger, I keep reading like Roger Ebert's reviews for like everything we do, and he brings up a good point that her parents could not be trying harder to almost like get rid of her. They're pulling her down the aisle, but like the folding chairs are too close. That's like Ebert points that out, and he gets her down there. And right after the wedding waltz, the first song we hear after that is the Coca-Cola song.
Right.
Which I like to buy the world, written by Don Draper, apparently. I don't know.
Which they also sing in the car.
Which they sing later, and
on the way to Miami.
I don't know if I quite get it, but Neil Simon, and I don't assume he picked the soundtrack, but there's eventually some borderline like high level like political commentary.
There's a lot of political satire that comes through as the story escalates, and boy does it escalate. But I do want to point out one scene that I just found incredibly uncomfortable and hilarious, is when they stop off at a diner. They're on their honeymoon.
Yeah.
And Lila, poor thing, she's just not a neat eater.
She's a real person.
She's a little messier than a real person. She has a little trouble with egg salad sandwiches, and egg salad.
She just loves them. It's a double egg salad.
It's not egg salad sandwiches are. you know, they're not the most appetizing thing at all times of the day, but she's wearing that egg salad sandwich all over her face.
So funny. It's so she's how do you describe her? Yeah, she's not exceedingly like classy exactly. She's maybe like a bit of a mess, but she's also, I don't know if you know this, Cole. She's
a Jewish American princess. She's a classic Jewish American princess.
She's also just like what like every girl out there is right now. This sort of like, I eat egg salad sandwiches and I fart, and you better get used to it. Like it's just so ahead of her time, which makes so much sense that she's Elaine May's daughter, because I feel like Elaine May somehow, while still being a bit obscure, just like gave birth to like the modern like perspective in some ways. She's it's such a great performance, because she really plays to all of the things that would be considered just a nightmare if you were this guy who married this girl, and all of a sudden, and here's another thing, they haven't slept together yet. And this is back in the good old days. It's pretty
when
clear
you weren't supposed to have sex before you were married.
He's trying to get some, and she's like, you can't wait 10 days, you know. And then you realize they're getting married, and this marriage happens very quick movie-wise, because it's basically in the title montage that they meet, that they get married,
right,
and
they're on their honeymoon.
And you get the sense that that's how Charles Grodin's feeling too. It's like, I kind of just want to get laid, and then suddenly he's on his honeymoon with this woman who pees and eats Snickers in bed
and can't stop talking during sex.
Yep.
Just wants to ask him questions during sex, and it doesn't. The sex isn't very good, is how it goes. It's just not everything
that's right.
It was cracked up to be.
And she brings up the point. It's like, I've never done this.
Right.
And he's like, well, I've never done this either. Which you're not sure whether to believe him, but like, I'll take him on his word. There is that he's never done it. So in this wanderlusty, very, I think this is a savvy view on where modern people are going. Like, it's just like last week I was talking about how Hannah and Her Sisters is a case for Tinder. I feel like this movie that came out
72.
Yeah, 72. So what? 14 years earlier.
Mm-hmm. Also a case for Tinder.
But it also feels like it's taking place in the Tinder universe, where it's just he's just like looking for the next best thing, but has accidentally hitched himself to this woman he doesn't really want to be with.
And you know, in the beginning, you're kind of wondering, well, you know, he's polite, but he's not really kind. She seems to have some kindness. But
I think she's so sweet.
Yeah, she's a sweet.
She doesn't have a malicious bone in her body.
That's true.
She's sloppy. She's got literally egg all over her face all the time. But
she's always talking about how great it's going to be to spend their next 40 or 50 years together. She's got the big picture in mind, and
so is she a bit old world in the sense that you get married and that's it, and you're done, and like, of course you're not going to get remarried.
Right.
And he has these like sort of tomorrow's another day $ signs in his eyes.
Well, it's
fast talking.
There's some of that dichotomy, I think, between, you know, like the Jewish traditional family view and his point of view, which is more to do with ambition.
So I wonder if in the Neil Simon play it's more obvious that he's also a Jew, because Charles Grodin doesn't come off exceedingly Jewish, and you feel that he has an outsider mentality to her. Like it's
well, I think it becomes clear once he gets to the beach, and this is where everything ramps up, is when he's on the beach and this total shiksa
goddess.
I can't believe that we both said that at the same time.
This Siksha goddess.
Oh my gosh, she is the whitest bread version of Mariel Hemingway beauty.
So yeah,
shocking.
You've obviously read Easy Riders and Raging Bulls. Like in that
Peter
book,
Biskigan,
Sybil Shepherd is basically what she is in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
She's
homewrecker.
She's a homewrecker. It's just Sybil. I mean, I don't even know how to talk about Sybil Shepherd right now. Like, it's just
Peter Bogdanovich.
Peter Bogdanovich.
He went down that road. Destroyed his marriage.
Yeah, look at me. I'm like flustered. Like
it's a great. What's the movie? The Peter Bogdanovich film.
The Best Picture, the Last Picture Show.
Last Picture Show, which is an amazing film.
Yeah,
truly,
and she's
truly
basically
amazing. Jeff Bridges is amazing
the same character. Is in that one. There's a guy who's got a perfectly nice girlfriend that will take off her shirt in the car.
Yeah.
But the guy sees her as this
ideal,
this Venus,
and he's going to fill in all the blanks. And this is the interesting thing that I found about her character is that she introduces herself to him by saying, "You're in my spot." So she's establishing this dominance over him, metaphorical and literal dominance, because he's lying down on the towel on the beach and she's standing over him. So she is really this dominant, dominatrix, this white bread dominatrix, dream, vision, and he immediately just falls head over heels, and he fills in all the blanks. She's constantly sending mixed signals about whether she's into him,
but that's the best
or not. That's where all the romantic tension. I don't even know if it's romantic. It's just it's intellectual and it's cross cultural because she's got the hardcore right wing dad played by Eddie Albert, and Eddie Albert just is the scariest white guy Republican you ever want to meet. You think John Wayne's scary? You don't want to tangle with Eddie Albert.
You know what I thought the reveal this movie was going to be? I thought it was going to go on until like the end of Act 2, and it was going to be revealed that the dad was like why am I not going to with you? Because my daughter's 14 years old. Like I thought that was going to be it, and then he gets back with Lila and realizes what he always had was great. No, it's not where it goes. It's so much more interesting.
Well, you got to give Neil Simon credit, because my favorite scene in the movie. I hope I'm not giving too much away, but there's a great scene.
Oh, I already ruined the movie, dude. Don't worry.
Oh, good. But this movie will speak to anyone and everyone who hears this podcast, because Eddie Albert just despises this little Jewish. Who does this guy think he is, coming in here trying to take my baby away?
I felt like he was always like one a studio note away from being like, "You're a fucking Jew."
Oh yeah, I think so too, and worse. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder. It kind of seems like I assume maybe Grodin had to tamp down the Jewishness so that wasn't such like the obvious conflict. There's a lot of New Yorker comments.
But it's there. It's all there. But he's trying to buy off Lenny, and it's the bargaining. I'll give you $5,000 in cash to walk away from my daughter, and he just keeps upping the amount and upping the amount and upping the amount, and that to me just says so much about the political, social climate of that time and the expectations. I mean, this guy is de facto Donald Trump, for sure.
So is this guy being the dad?
Yeah, Eddie Albert, Mr. Corcoran.
So 1972, and I don't know when Simon wrote it, but is Charles Grodin Nixon? Right?
Well, no, he can't be Nixon because he's Jewish.
Who is he? There's all these references to him, like, well, when I spent 3 years in
the military,
in the armed forces, and though I didn't go overseas, I did run into a lot of pricks in these small military towns.
Right, he was in the South. He was somehow stationed in the South, and he
was in boot camp for 3 years. And he was shit, right?
Right, so he was
guard duty.
But he was catching all of the Southern bigotry against Jews.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's the subtext there.
And so, Charles Grodin is
he's such a blowhard.
He's a fast talker.
He's a fast talker, but he's literally a blowhard. He puts so much breath into every word. It really just, it hits you in the guts the way this guy phrases everything. I mean, this is the comic genius of Charles Grodin, because what would normally in somebody else's mouth just be, a standard line. And of course, it is Neil Simon, so this is good, high quality writing stuff. But boy, he nails it.
It's so ahead of its time in this, man trying to keep things cool with his wife and just making up these elaborate lies.
Oh, the lies. He lies and lies.
Such a progenitor to
so much.
I'm not gonna bring it up again, but this was remade with Ben Stiller in 2007. We're not gonna talk about it, but there's an element that all of these Farrelly brothers, Ben Stiller, Vince Vaughn comedies use of these guys making up these elaborate lies. But then those characters kind of need to defend themselves and ultimately be likable and have save the cat kind of. And this guy is just a piece of shit.
Oh yeah,
who's going out stepping on his wife, and it's just we were in a car accident. Did you watch the news? I'll call the officer. You want me to call the?
Oh yeah, no, and he's coming up with a fake name for the cop and everything. but I do want to talk about what for me, and it's the brilliance of Elaine May. It's the brilliance of Neil Simon. It's the brilliance of Charles Grodin and Jeannie Berlin when they go to dinner. They're finally. She's been holed up in the hotel while he's out cheating. She's been holed up in the hotel with sunburn, and he's just been spinning all these lies so that he can get away from her. But finally, he takes her to a nice lobster dinner that he's been promising her, and with the intention that he's going to break up with her. He's going to divorce her. He's going to tell her the divorce. And this is where you really see her character, Lila's character, because she looks great. Her hair's great, the sunburn's gone. She's really happy. She's genuinely happy that they're married and they're having this wonderful meal together. And of course, this slimy dog is just there to dump her. And the tension of that scene and how there's a moment where she almost diffuses it because he's trying to explain himself about, you're 22 and you have the whole world. We both have our whole lives ahead of us. And she looks at him and she says, I didn't know you were this deep.
I never knew you were so deep.
So she was learning about it. She feels like she's learning something about her new husband and what a great person he is. And then he just does the ugliest, worst thing.
That it's not the darkest thing you've ever seen.
Because
it is one of the darkest things.
Yeah, it's total
3
light
days
to dark.
in, he's divorcing this woman who's completely in love with him. And who, this is her dream, and she sees these couples in their 70s, and she's like, that's going to be us. That's going to be amazing. And he spends maybe 6 hours with, it is Sybil Shepherd. I don't know how much, But anyway, it's but he's gone, and he's gaga, and his, He's suddenly just fast talking his way into he pulls the audience along into not thinking about how she's really feeling. It's almost like the momentum of the movie is being seduced by his manicness onto the next thing, but it's there. The heartbreakingness is there.
Well, let's talk about the similarities to the Graduate, because I recently, a couple of years ago, I rewatched The Graduate to finally write an essay about it, and I found it to be a completely different film than the one I had watched many times before getting to it. And maybe it's just that I had matured and lived in New York long enough, but I realized that what's going on is you've got this Jewish guy who's trying to pass as goy, and he's trying to win his way into the white man's house. And I think that's what you have here. Charles Grodin's character goes to the Midwest, and he's got to beat down the door to try and steal this goy chicksa.
Yeah, he sees something in her instantly, I think, besides just her beauty. He sees... And that's exactly where the question mark is, that I think I want to be what does he want? what does he want? Does he has this old world marriage, and like if he wants it, he's going to have a wife who's there with him forever. But there's something. Is it conquering?
Yeah, it's conquering. Yeah, he's the interloper who wants to conquer the white man's world.
And so he dumps Junie Berlin, dumps Lila. He goes to Minnesota. There's all these kind of like jokes on the radio reports, like it's 5 degrees below zero, making it slightly colder than it was this summer. So it's like
tomorrow will be a high of 3 degrees above zero.
Yeah, so it's like he's clearly out of his element, but just this absolute, in another movie it'd be admirable, right? Like.
Well, he sells his soul. He completely sells his identity, everything. He loses the convertible. He sells the convertible.
He gives up all his whole $6,000.
Right. He for the divorce. He is at least a little bit generous with the divorce. He gives Lila everything, and this guy's probably got $900 to his name.
In a way, but it's not out of love, right? It's
desperation.
It's out of like, how do I get out of this immediately? Because he's kind of giving this conflict. It's like, you can have a divorce if she does the thing that you have to do. Is you have to go somewhere else and take up residency, and then you can divorce, but it's faster. Or you can just give up everything and have it annulled. And he's like, yeah, no, just do the annulment. It's fine. We'll just keep plowing forward, because he has this singular mission that. One thing is like. This character, I feel like we see in romantic comedies now, but there's always a break where he's actually a good guy.
Right.
Like he gets caught up in the moment, but he's a good guy. This person, Charles Grodin's character, is never breaks from this.
No.
We don't actually know what he wants.
He's a bad person. He's an opportunist. Mm-hmm. He's just a pure opportunist. Lila is the protagonist, really, if you want to look at whose side you're on. In that scene when they're having that lobster dinner, you're totally pulling for Lila. And that
in another movie, that would be where it turns back.
Right.
He would be like, you know what? You maybe have egg on your face, but you're my egg all over your face.
Right. But then there's nowhere for the movie to go, and also at that point we have to find out whether all these mixed signals that Sybil Shepherd's character has been sending, if there's anything to it. But I mean, if he had any sense, I have to say, as a mature guy, if he had any sense about him, he would see what a manipulative person she is, and he would reject that, because anytime you see a woman sending mixed signals like that, run. Do not walk. Turn in a 180-degree direction and run.
But who is he? Who's he but like the master
Kelly
of mixed signals? He is like, and he ultimately conquers her through what he believes are like protestations of love. But let's talk about the end of the movie. Like The Graduate, it's not spoken. It's not entirely clear what is lacking here. Like if you just take it on paper and like the facts of what happened, he marries the girl and it's great.
Yeah.
But it's between the lines. It's in the acting. It's in the sort of lack of an underline. And it's in The Graduate. I'm of course speaking of like the last shot that
when they're on the bus.
Where they're on the bus.
And that shot is so important because Dustin Hoffman is looking straight ahead toward the camera. And the woman who's the actress? She's just looking at him. So his focus is now on to the next thing. He shares a lot. The Dustin Hoffman character shares a lot in common with Charles Grodin's character, because they're really both just made of ambition.
Supposedly, Nichols had called cut, and that's Hoffman looking like to the camera and like to the set, being like, "All right, what do you want to do now?" And in the edit bay, they were like, hey, what do you think about this? And like, who knows? But that completely changes.
You know, I wrote my essay just a few months before Mike Nichols died, and I got in touch with his publicist, and I really wanted to interview him. I wanted to have this interview about the story through this lens of this Jewish guy trying to pass as white, and the publicist didn't get back to me, and then he died, and I was really crushed that I didn't get that interview, because I think that would have been so interesting to talk about it from that perspective.
I mean, I think that the themes are
Catherine Ross, is
Anne Bancroft's daughter in that. Yeah.
That's right, in The Graduate.
I mean, the themes are absolutely like in this movie, and second wedding, you know, and we have weddings like bookending this movie, and it's, you know, and he's talking the way that Benjamin's character in The Graduate is being talked to, or, you know, like
right.
Plastics, you know,
right,
and he's got this like super phony politician like thing about like, you know, I think the Earth is really a thing that we should get back to. And,
yeah, he manages to bore the 10-year-old kids to running away from him.
He says to the kid, you know, he's like, I'm in sporting goods now. Like I forget what it is exactly, but that last
which her dad reduces to balls and bats.
To balls and bats. You know, it's actually like a $3 billion business a year. But yeah, the 10-year-old kid is bored of him, and he does his own, you know, sort of basically like looks at the camera of like, all right, what's next? Like, I got her, and it's so nihilistic, you know, and it's, you know, I don't know what to take from it, like, except like it just feels very true. Clearly, like, just an old world marriage where you're going to be married for 50 years is antiquated. But if you're just fixated on conquering the next thing, you're going to get your beautiful Six of Princess.
Yeah.
And you're going to... Sorry. His, like, best man is the jock that he conquers her.
The Aryan jock.
Yeah, the Aryan jock.
Yeah, it's a very interesting movie. It's so squirmy. It made me feel so squirmy the whole time I was watching. I was squirming around in my seat, but it's so funny and it's so authentic. I mean, there's so much realism in it, and I guess between Elaine May and the performances here and Neil Simon's writing, it's just a perfect storm for a romantic comedy, and I cannot recommend this movie highly enough. If you have not seen The Heartbreak Kid, don't watch any other movies. Get yourself straight to this movie, because it is the real deal. This is a 5-star, A+ movie, and Charles Grodin is amazing.
Couldn't agree more. It's a great time, and I don't know if I mentioned this. Sybil Shepherd is in this movie. You might want to watch it because of that.
And she takes her clothes off and other stuff.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.